The studio is abuzz with noise. Students weave around each other as we gather our materials, each filling our workspace with our medium of choice. I choose paint. My chosen color palette laid out in tubes on my desk, my brushes dumped headfirst into a bucket of water, and a color-stained rag draped over the chair. All is in place. I set up my easel, choose a canvas, and stand back. How to start? Everything begins with shapes. Flat red circles on a green background, a strip of blue towards the top. It's rather unimpressive. It doesn't even look like the subject I'm trying to paint. It will get there though, and as I work, the world around me begins to fade. It is in this state that I am at my closest to God. In the movie Chariots of Fire, a character says, "God made me fast, and when I run, I feel his pleasure." Well, God made me artistic. And when I paint, I feel more right than at any other time. It's raw and beautiful and more prayerful than anything I can put into words. In my attempt to echo God's wonder, I can feel God's presence. And even though I will make mistakes, this work will be an echo of something much greater. How I got here with my art is simple. I drew as a child on a plastic easel my parents bought for me. I drew as a preteen, and often got in trouble in class for drawing. I draw now as a young adult and plan to make it my career. It has always brought me joy. God? No, God's a different story. When I was a young child, I was told my parents were Christian and that being a Christian meant loving God and Jesus. I didn't really understand what that meant, but Mom and Dad said it was true, so it had to be. Still, we were never a church-going family. Between soccer, dance, and swim team, there was just never time. We always had somewhere to be, and of course my parents couldn't miss a single game. Eventually, we became priesters, and as a hyperactive child, I was just fine with that. Still, I knew religion was important. As I grew, I began to question all that I had been taught to believe. Art stayed with me, but God did not. I had fallen into depression, and after begging God to make it better for months, I gave up. I didn't feel as though I belonged to anyone, much less a God I barely knew. I was bullied on a daily basis and had very few friends. I was called things like devil worshiper and worthless because of my lack of belief. I refused to tell my parents because I believed I would simply be a burden to them. Instead, I pretended I was okay when all I really felt was numb. To put it simply, life sucked. Things began to change in my 8th grade year when I joined the Northwest High School Color Guard. Here I discovered a new form of art, where I told stories with my body and a flag instead of just pencil and paper. It was also here that I met Sam and Kelly Joyce. Sam and I began to date while I was still an atheist, and it was with these two people that I encountered a new side of Christianity. I had never before met people who did not spew hatred and then claim to be preaching God's love in the same breath. We would talk for hours about everything from religion to TV. Eventually, Sam and Kelly would leave their old church to come to College Park. After only a few weeks, Sam invited me along as well. At first I was wary. What church would accept me? A liberal-thinking, spiked collar-wearing, tradition-eschewing atheist. I was more than pleasantly surprised. I wasn't open about my beliefs at first. I had alienated more than enough people to know it was something you didn't bring up right away. After only a few weeks, I felt comfortable being entirely myself. It's true what Matt Gravy said. My question at the end of the month was, how did I become involved here so quickly? I became a regular member, enjoyed lively debates that I never would have dreamed of less than 6 months prior, and watched as people shared opposing views while staying friends. Over the course of the year, I watched Len Bunce, Michael Yusey, Matt Gravy, Adam T., and many others practice what they preached. No one tried to convert me. No one told me I was going to hell. I was welcomed, as I was, no strings attached. That affected me deeply. Slowly, my views began to change, and I came to know a God far different from the image I'd had before. This God was loving. This was a God that wanted true works, not lip service. This was a God I could believe in. It wasn't sudden. It happened so gradually that I almost didn't notice. But one day, I realized, I'm a Christian. Even though my depression remained, finding him apart had given me a step up, a ladder with which to climb out of my hole. Instead of relying solely on art, I began to make my church my home, my safe place where I would always be okay. It began to reflect in my art as well, where before I had simply drawn what I imagined, I now began to draw what I saw. I have found that the beauty of the world is impossible to replicate. The iridescence of a sunset, or the lights shimmering through the trees. My art echoes these things, but always bounces back, just a bit softer, slightly muted, even muddled. An artist can take paint and canvas and make it beautiful, but still, it's only a ripple off of God's great work. It is through art that I have developed a deep reverence for God. You see, of all the artists the world has seen, God is the greatest. His work is that from which all other is inspired, the original to our reflection. Who but an artist could create the soft light of dawn, or the fragility of a butterfly's wing? Unlike the artist's work, God's work is limitless, not hindered by the boundaries of canvas, using colors I can never even imagine. The artist's painting might be beautiful, but God's actual sunset will be breathtaking. Art has helped me understand our relationship with God. Art is an interplay between the Creator and her medium. This is like creation. The beautiful thing about creation is that we are in a relationship with God and respond with our lives. Our relationship with God is interplay. A man stops to help another to his feet. A woman coaxes a lost dog out of the road. Instead of a paintbrush, God paints with our lives. We echo God's love through our actions, our words, and our thoughts. Just the smallest highlight can make a piece, and a small act of kindness can majorly impact someone's day. When we follow Jesus' example of love and acceptance, we are doing our part to continue painting God's creation. It's almost like a paint by number. Okay, so maybe it's not that easy. Maybe it takes effort and work, and sometimes you mess up. About a week ago, I was painting a self-portrait in black India ink. You already know where this is going, don't you? Having nearly completed the piece, I spilled ink all over the lower half of the paper. I managed to mop some of it up, but of course it had already done the damage. So what now? Ink can't be erased, and unfortunately, life has no undo button. I ended up working the ink into a shirt, something I hadn't originally planned on doing. It ended up looking great, possibly even better than it would have. The point is, even our mistakes are used in the paintings of our lives. You can learn from them. For example, I won't be leaving my ink jar open anymore. And you can pull the good out of a bad situation. We are free to make mistakes, and free to echo God's work to the very best of our abilities. He will use it all. And this is true for every one of us. An artist almost never uses just one brush. Small brushes are for detail. Big ones are for large swatches of color. Round tip, flat tip, fan. Often, there are more brushes than you know what to do with. God is the same way, though his selection is even more vast. It is in this way that we as people can connect through art. I have also found that I can reach out with my art. This year, I used my senior concentration to focus on people and their problems. I did a piece on homelessness, on human trafficking, abuse, and 9 other issues. At the end of each piece, I felt closer to understanding the people in those situations. I knew more about them thanks to research, and I had a better idea of what I could do to help. The piece that impacted me the most, however, wasn't about others. It was about me. Since middle school, I have suffered from depression and have only now begun to recover. Knowing how little understanding there is for depressed kids, I decided to tackle the issue with my art. As I worked, I felt myself slipping a little. It's time, something inside me seemed to say. For the first time in years, I knew I was going to be okay. I'm not out of the hole yet, but finally there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Having finally come to terms with myself, I came to another realization as I finished the final piece in my concentration. I'm not ready to stop. I want to do more than just draw. I want to help. My art has connected me not only to God, but also to others and to myself. When the piece is finished, it's transformed from those unrecognizable shapes at the beginning of the process to a beautiful reflection of reality. The red circles have become juicy, ripe tomatoes, the green background transformed into lush, twisting vines, and that strip of blue at the top has morphed into sunlight, filtering through the leaves. Exhaustion sets in, and suddenly my eyes are a lot more tired than they were 2 seconds ago. Content to leave the painting to dry, my cleanup begins. The paints are put away, the outside world reintroduced. The painting is a labor of love, and though it is not a reflection, it is an echo of the beauty found even in the most simplest things. I can only hope that I create my life in the same way.